Have you ever thought about feeding your puppy the BARF diet, but are afraid of making a mistake? Many owners start out full of good intentions, but end up making mistakes that compromise the growth, health, and even life of the animal, all explained in a clear, direct, and science-based way so that you offer the best to your puppy from the beginning of life. If you're just starting out on the BARF diet, this video will open your eyes to the mistakes that should never be made. Like the video? Subscribe to the channel. When an owner decides to feed their puppy the BARF diet, the initial enthusiasm is usually accompanied by doubts, fears, and often mistakes that can compromise the animal's health. It's natural. The desire to offer a more natural diet, free of ultra-processed foods and rich in nutrients, often clashes with the lack of practical information and the abundance of contradictory advice found on the internet. And it is precisely at this intersection between good intention and lack of guidance that the most dangerous misconceptions arise. The first and perhaps most common mistake is to believe that puppies can receive exactly the same proportion of food as adult dogs. This confusion arises from the fact that many tutors consult general BARF tables and apply the quantities without considering that puppies have much more intense nutritional needs because they are in a phase of accelerated growth. While an adult dog needs to maintain its structure, the puppy needs to build muscles, bones, organs, and even the immune system. This means that the caloric and nutritional intake is greater and more delicate. When an owner replicates the adult diet for a puppy, they risk causing malnutrition, growth delays, and even bone deformities. To understand better, imagine a German Shepherd puppy that is only 3 months old. If he is fed the same proportion as a 20-kilogram adult, his body will not have sufficient reserves of calcium, phosphorus, high-quality protein, and vitamins. The result can be irregular growth, bowed legs, fragile joints, and even difficulty supporting one's own weight when reaching adolescence. This is a silent mistake, because the signs often appear months later, when the owner already believes that everything is fine. The solution is simple, but it requires discipline. Adjust the proportion of food to 10% of the puppy's body weight per day, instead of the 2 to 3% recommended for adults. This calculation needs to be done weekly, since growth is fast and constant. Another very frequent mistake is the imbalance between calcium and phosphorus. Many owners who are new to the BARF diet believe that it is enough to add raw bones to ensure the necessary calcium, but forget to balance it with sources of phosphorus. The result is an incorrect relationship between these two minerals that are fundamental for bone formation. If calcium is offered in excess, the skeleton can become too rigid, predisposing the puppy to fractures. If it is insufficient, the bones grow soft, fragile, and subject to irreversible deformation. This mistake is serious because once the bone structure is compromised during childhood, it is unlikely that the dog or cat will fully recover. The ideal is to maintain a ratio of 1.2 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus, using meaty bones in the right measure, such as chicken necks, wings, and ribs, always adapted to the size of the chick. No less common is the mistake of exaggerating the variety right at the beginning. Excited tutors want to offer everything, different meats, varied offal, vegetables, and fruits in excess. While the variety is positive in the long run, a puppy's digestive system is immature and needs gradual adaptation. Introducing too many ingredients at once overloads the intestine, favors diarrhea, vomiting, and can generate food aversion. The safest thing is to start with a base protein, such as chicken for 2 to 3 weeks, and only then add new meats. Thus, the body learns to digest gradually, and the tutor can more easily identify which food may cause an adverse reaction. Another frequent misconception is to underestimate the importance of viscera. Many tutors, out of disgust or fear, reduce or even exclude these ingredients, believing that they are not so needed. But the viscera are fundamental. Liver, kidney, and heart provide fat-soluble vitamins, hemiiron, coenzymes, and taurine. In the case of cats, vital for heart and eye health. Without them, the puppy can develop severe anemia, muscle weakness, and cognitive delay. On the other hand, excess liver can intoxicate by the accumulation of vitamin A. Therefore, balance is key. About 10% of the diet should be composed of varied viscera, always fresh and well-selected. And finally, there's the mistake of lack of correct supplementation. Many believe that just meat, bones, and viscera are enough, but forget that the offspring need essential fatty acids, such as omega-3 from fish oil, as well as vitamin E, zinc, and other minerals. A classic example is the development of skin problems and dry coats due to lack of fatty acids. In cats, the absence of extra taurine and adequate animal fat can lead to retinal degeneration. The well-meaning but ill-informed owner often discovers these problems too late. The impact of all these mistakes goes far beyond immediate health. A poorly fed puppy in the first months of life carries consequences for its entire existence: predisposition to diseases, weak bones, low immunity, and even less longevity. Each wrong choice in this period is equivalent to compromising decades of quality of life. Therefore, the introduction of the BARF diet for puppies must be accompanied by responsibility and knowledge. It is not enough to copy a recipe from the internet or rely on the experience of another tutor. It is necessary to understand the nutritional logic, respect the accelerated growth of young animals, and balance each ingredient carefully. The initial enthusiasm must be guided by science so that the good intention of offering a healthier life does not become a risk. And yet, even knowing all these dangers, there is still one error that overrides all the others: trusting that any meat will do and ignoring the origin of food. This seemingly simple detail can be the line between the life and death of the puppy. When the tutor thinks he is doing everything right, he often ends up bumping into a silent error: the origin and quality of the meat offered. Unlike an adult who has a more mature digestive system and an already strengthened immunity, puppies are extremely vulnerable to bacteria, parasites, and contamination. Buying cheap meat in butcher shops of dubious origin or taking advantage of leftovers from refrigerators may seem like a way to save money, but the real price comes later: persistent diarrhea, intestinal infections, and in more serious cases, organ failure. An often overlooked detail is the cold chain. Meat that leaves the butcher shop without proper refrigeration and remains exposed to room temperature for too long quickly becomes a breeding ground for Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. For a puppy, whose immune system is still developing, these bacteria can be lethal. Therefore, correct storage and handling are crucial. Always keep the meat frozen at least 18 degrees below zero, thaw slowly in the refrigerator, and never reuse leftovers that have been left out for hours. Another serious mistake is to rely on large or unsuitable bones for puppies. There are tutors who, believing they strengthen teeth and jaws, offer ox bones, bones that are too long and hard. The result? Dental fractures, choking, and even perforations in the esophagus or stomach. Puppies should receive only soft, fleshy bones, such as chicken necks and wings, small ribs or carcasses, adapted to the size of the animal. The rule is clear: bones should be raw, never cooked, as heat alters their structure, making them brittle and dangerous. Still on the topic of safety, a recurring mistake is in hygiene. Many tutors prepare the BARF diet for puppies on the same surface where they handle family food, without proper disinfection. This not only exposes the animal to risks, but also the entire house. The ideal is to separate boards, knives, and containers exclusively for the preparation of the pet's diet, in addition to washing hands and utensils with hot water and soap immediately after use. Cleaning must be rigorous because puppies have a habit of licking hands, floors, and everything they encounter, increasing exposure to pathogens. Another common misconception is the lack of correct fractionation of meals. Owners who are used to feeding adults once or twice a day reproduce the same pattern for puppies. This is a mistake that can compromise not only digestion, but also metabolism. Puppies, especially in the first months, need 3 to 4 meals a day at regular times. Long periods of fasting favor hypoglycemia, weakness, and even seizures in extreme cases. Each meal should be balanced without exaggeration, but constant to ensure energy throughout the day. A detail that is little discussed is the impact of food consistency. Some tutors grind the diet too much, turning it into a kind of porridge. While this seems to make it easier to ingest, especially in small breeds, it deprives the puppy of chewing, which is essential for jaw development, strengthening teeth, and even stimulating the nervous system. On the other hand, offering pieces that are too large can cause choking or make digestion difficult. The balance is in offering cuts proportional to the size of the animal, maintaining sufficient texture for chewing exercise. It is also common to confuse the homemade diet and the BARF diet. Many believe that cooking meat and adding rice or pasta is part of the proposal, but this totally mischaracterizes the concept. BARF is based on raw, biologically suitable foods with no refined grains or processed carbohydrates. The introduction of rice, corn, or wheat not only impairs digestibility, but also overloads the pancreas and can trigger early food allergies. A puppy that starts life with excess grain is at risk of developing lifelong intolerances, manifested in irritated skin, hair loss, and chronic gastrointestinal problems. Another mistake, this one of a practical nature, is not adapting the diet to the growth of the animal. A puppy does not have the same weight for more than a week. It grows fast, and along with it, increases its caloric and nutritional needs. Many tutors make the mistake of fixing an amount and keeping it for months without adjustments. This results in excessive thinness, developmental delay, or, at the opposite extreme, early obesity. The calculation of the food must be redone weekly, weighing the puppy and adjusting the proportion. And finally, a mistake that goes unnoticed: relying only on the eye meter. Many owners think that the animal is fine just by appearance, but a puppy can be seemingly active and still suffer silent deficiencies, such as anemia, lack of vitamin D, zinc, or copper. These deficits only reveal themselves when they have already caused sequelae. The only way to avoid this is with regular veterinary follow-up, periodic blood tests, and constant dietary adjustments. The truth is that each of these errors, when accumulated, creates a real risk scenario. Puppies do not forgive nutritional flaws. A slip can mean months of stunting, a weakened immune system, or even a future sick adult. Feeding well from the beginning is the difference between a strong, healthy, and long-lived dog or cat and an animal that carries problems for life. But there is another mistake that is even more common and that is often confused with love, offering snacks and leftover human food along with the BARF diet. This habit may seem harmless, but for a puppy, it is a real trap. Many owners make the mistake of believing that small treats from the table will not make a difference in the puppy's health. A piece of bread, a cookie, a little bit of pasta with sauce, a slice of cheese. But the reality is that human food scraps can profoundly compromise the logic of the BARF diet. Puppies are organisms in formation, with an extremely sensitive metabolism. The introduction of refined carbohydrates, condiments, and preservatives disrupts the nutritional balance of the raw diet, overloading the kidneys, liver, and pancreas. The immediate consequence can be diarrhea or vomiting, but the cumulative effect is even more dangerous: early obesity, intestinal inflammation, and chronic allergies. Another mistake associated with this habit is negative reinforcement. When the tutor offers leftovers from the table, the puppy begins to refuse his own diet, waiting for the stronger flavor of human food. This generates food selectivity, makes it difficult to adhere to the natural menu, and often leads the owner to believe that the animal does not like BARF. The truth is that the puppy's taste buds have been diverted by artificial stimuli that are not part of its biology. Avoiding this mistake requires discipline. No human food should replace or complement the BARF diet, except those specifically planned within the recipe, such as vegetables or fruits indicated in small quantities. Speaking of vegetables and fruits, another recurring misconception is the incorrect use of these ingredients. Although they are part of the BARF diet, they should be offered in small proportions, no more than 10% of the meal, and always processed in puree form, since dogs and cats do not have enough enzymes to digest raw vegetable fibers in large pieces. The common mistake is to offer whole carrots, pieces of apple, or raw potatoes, believing that the animal will chew. In practice, this has no nutritional benefit, and in the case of raw potatoes, it can even be toxic. The fix is simple: lightly grind or cook when indicated certain vegetables and use them in small quantities in a planned way. Another silent mistake is neglect of hydration. Many owners believe that because the BARF diet is naturally moist, there's no need to pay attention to water intake. Although the raw diet does provide more fluids than dry food, puppies still need to have constant access to fresh water. Lack of sufficient hydration can result in constipation, urinary stones, and early renal impairment. This is particularly relevant in cats, which have a low natural tendency to drink water. Ensuring affordable, clean, and attractive sources is a fundamental part of the nutritional strategy. Another critical point is the rush to replace feed with BARF at once. Many tutors, excited, make the abrupt change, which overloads the puppy's digestive system. This rapid transition almost always results in severe diarrhea, vomiting, and loss of appetite. The correct thing is to make the change gradually, in 7 to 10 days, introducing small portions of BARF with the feed and progressively increasing it until total adaptation. This respects the puppy's gut microbiota, which needs time to adjust to the new type of food. No less serious is the mistake of blindly trusting ready-made recipes, copied from internet groups or adapted without criteria. Each puppy is unique. Weight, breed, genetic predisposition, growth rate, and even individual particularities influence the ideal diet. A formula that works for a Labrador can be disastrous for a Bulldog. The lack of personalization leads to nutritional imbalances that are difficult to correct. Ideally, the entire menu should be assembled based on veterinary calculations, or at least adjusted weekly by the tutor according to the puppy's evolution. Another common mistake is forgetting that kittens, although they can also follow the BARF diet, have very different needs than dogs. The absence of taurine, for example, can lead to irreversible blindness. Many cat owners simply replicate the diet of dogs, believing that it works the same. But cats are obligate carnivores, require a higher proportion of protein and animal fat, and cannot receive certain vegetables. The feline diet should be even more rigorous, focusing on muscle meat, heart, liver, and adequate supplementation of taurine and omega-3. And finally, a mistake that mixes anxiety and overzealousness, obsessively monitoring each meal and changing the diet constantly. Some owners, insecure, interpret any softer stools or an eventual refusal as a sign of serious error and change the entire strategy. This instability only confuses the puppy's body, which needs constancy to adapt. The result is a cycle of successive changes, which generates digestive stress and anxiety in the tutor and the animal. The best strategy is to observe trends over days or weeks, not isolated episodes, and make gradual adjustments, always with discretion. By putting all these misconceptions together, a pattern can be perceived: overconfidence in quick solutions, combined with a lack of technical knowledge, exposes puppies to avoidable risks. However, there is still one last mistake, more subtle, more psychological, and more dangerous, believing that because it is natural, the BARF diet is immune to failure. This belief, common among beginners, can be the trigger for all other problems. The belief that because it's natural, it's okay, is perhaps the most dangerous mistake an owner can make when offering BARF to puppies. This romanticized view disregards that nature, by itself, does not guarantee nutritional balance or food security. Animals in the wild face high mortality rates precisely because they do not always have access to complete nutrients or contamination-free meats. A puppy raised at home depends entirely on the responsibility of the tutor not to be exposed to the same risks. One of the clearest examples of this trap is believing that fresh meats alone are enough. Without the proper balance of vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids, the diet becomes incomplete. The beginner tutor, motivated by the idea that natural is always better, often forgets that domestication has changed the needs of dogs and cats. A puppy fed only muscle meat without bones, viscera, and supplements can develop severe deficiencies of calcium, iron, and vitamin D, with irreversible consequences. Another reflection of this mistaken thinking is the negligence with veterinary supervision. Many tutors, confident that they are following nature, fail to carry out regular consultations or laboratory tests. The result is that silent problems, such as mineral deficiencies or changes in the liver and kidneys, are only detected when they have already become diseases. Puppies need periodic monitoring, and the BARF diet, no matter how balanced it is, must be constantly adjusted according to clinical and laboratory tests. It is also common to make the mistake of underestimating the importance of consistency and routine. The belief that a little bit of everything is good leads some tutors to vary the ingredients excessively, without planning, believing they are offering diversity. In practice, this lack of routine prevents the adaptation of the intestinal microbiota, generates frequent diarrhea, and increases the risk of imbalances. Puppies need constancy to grow healthily. The variety is welcome, but it should be introduced gradually with monitoring. Another critical point is the temptation to improvise homemade supplements. Some owners resort to recipes from the internet, adding eggshell powder, cooking oil, or even human multivitamins. These improvisations, in addition to being dangerous, can intoxicate the puppies. Excess calcium, for example, is as harmful as its lack and can cause calcifications in the kidneys and bone deformities. The use of supplements should always be based on specific calculations and preferably guided by a veterinary nutritionist. In addition, the mistake of ignoring subtle warning signs can be costly. Puppies who have frequent changes in their stool, constant itching, shedding, or difficulty gaining weight are sending signals that something is not right. Many owners normalize these symptoms, believing that it's just a phase, but in fact, they are indicators of nutritional imbalances that, if not corrected, compromise development forever. To avoid all these mistakes, the path is always the same: information, discipline, and professional monitoring. The owner needs to understand that the BARF diet for puppies is a powerful tool, but also a sensitive one. It's not just about offering raw food, but about planning a balanced nutrition that respects the specific needs of this phase. With the correct base, adjusted proportions, quality meat, safe bones, balanced viscera, adequate supplementation, and constant monitoring, it is possible to raise strong, healthy, and long-lived puppies. Basically, the biggest mistake is not in offering the BARF diet, but in believing that it is an automatic solution, independent of study and responsibility. When applied consciously, BARF transforms the animal's life, offering energy, immunity, and quality of life that would be difficult to achieve with industrialized feed. But when applied carelessly, it can become a silent threat, especially to growing puppies. Thus, the final lesson for every tutor is clear. Loving a puppy is more than giving affection and companionship. It is also about studying, learning, correcting mistakes, and taking responsibility for offering the best from the beginning. Because each meal at this stage is an opportunity to build or compromise the animal's entire future.